Hi, my name is Talia. Welcome to Talia Nerds Out. I feel like it's been a little while since I made a last video. I can't remember exactly when, it just feels like it's been a while. But this warmer did not keep my tea nearly as warm as I thought it would. Anyway, I guess I probably should, before I go into the book enhancements, they'll last for quite a while just because, I don't need to pick up more books for a little while. But I do want to cover some of the books that I have been reading thus far this quarter. I did finish, let's see, what have I finished before I talk about what I'm currently reading? I did finish the Anglo-Saxons by Mark Morris. I was listening to that one. I did really enjoy that. I felt like he was objective. Now, I think I would have gotten more out of it if I have chosen to read it on Kindle or physical form versus listen to it. It was very easy to get lost in all the names that were similar. That being said, I did really enjoy it. I liked the reader. I do feel like I pulled enough from it that when I'm reading the rest of the books from that period, things are clicking and be like, oh yeah, I remember that from the Mark Morris book. But I will probably, not this time around, but I will probably at some point reread that book, but in physical form versus in the audiobook, just because I don't know that the era with all the similar names really lends itself well to an audiobook, at least not for me. What else did I finish? I did finish the Red Prince, which was a book on John of Gaunt. I can't remember if I mentioned that I finished it last time. I know I posted it in the Discord for the Historathon. But, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. It was, we were talking in there, talking about how in the Discord, and the author is biased towards John of Gaunt, but by the way, I can't remember because I forget things 5 seconds after I say it. Apparently I am that I can't even remember the name. So that blue fish from Nemo, but I can't remember that name because apparently my memory doesn't last more than 5 seconds at a time. Anyhow, I can't remember if I accidentally called the Red Prince Richard III. It's not. It's John of Gaunt. But since I can't remember whether or not I said that, if I did say that, that was a misspeak. Anyhow. And, oh yeah, Dory is the fish. Duh. Okay. Not that that's important. It just was apparently important to me at that second. Anyway, this is probably going to be an odd video because apparently I'm just going to not remember things today. It's supposed to rain coming the weekend. That always messes with me. Anyway, so I did enjoy the John of Gaunt book, although I could see the bias. I do need to find another book at some point to read that is not so obviously biased toward him. The author was Helen Carr. When I looked her up, I could not find any other historical books that she had written, and I had hypothesized that theorized that perhaps it was like a passion project for her. But yeah, I didn't find anything else by her. And I'm sure if I look, I can find another John of Gaunt book that is more objective or gives just a different point of view. Thus far, I've only read John of Gaunt in any detail in this book, and then in Alison Weir's book on Catherine Swineford. It was supposedly about her, but honestly, it was more about him than about her, just because there's not a lot of evidence in regards to her. And that was a book I read last year. But yeah, so I've kind of read 2 books on him because the other one was kind of more about him than her. So those are 2 I have finished. What I am currently reading, well, I'm kind of excited because I haven't read it in a little while, but in the Silmarillion, I have made it to where they've mentioned that I'm sorry, my brain is just so ridiculous. Luthien, there. I don't know. I kept thinking in my head Tenuvial. I'm like, that's not her full name. Luthien. They've mentioned Luthien in passing so far, which makes me excited because that is a story I'm really looking forward to. It apparently was one of Tolkien's favorite stories. I've always had a particular fascination about it. When I've heard it talked about, it just seems like a really cool story. But right now, I am headed into chapter 11, which it's titled "Of the Sun and Moon and the Hiding of Valinor." So this will be good because I'm really getting into what feels like the action of things, and I need to start reading this more. I've had a lot of light sensitivity, and this is not a book that I read when I can't really focus. I want to be able to enjoy this and get as much out of it as I can. So that's part of the reason why this hasn't been getting as much love as I want to give it. I need to get back into reading the Book of Kells. It's a little bit of a dry read. I mean, most of it is pictures, but I have hardly gotten into the pictures, and just the stuff leading up to some of the artwork is just really kind of dry. I mean, it is written by, I want to say he is a, does it say anything about him? I was trying to see if it told me anything about the author, but it just says that his name is Peter Brown, so it doesn't really tell me much about him. But yeah, I find it to be a bit dry. I do need to get back into it, though. The other one I need to get back into, I have a feeling this is going to be an all-quarter read. I mean, when I read it, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's just the type is small, so it takes me a while, and there's a lot packed into here. This is Bede's The Ecclesiastical History of the English People. I enjoy his writing style, and it's fun sometimes to catch where some of his biases are, because he doesn't hide, what his opinion, he doesn't try to act like his point of view is anything than what it is. I mean, he does, I think, try to go for a level of objectivity, but I mean, he definitely has bias, and I think he's aware of it. But I find Bede to be enjoyable to read. It's fun to see when he's quoted in other books that I'm reading, because he does get quoted a lot. The other thing that gets quoted a lot is the English Chronicle. I'm sorry, not the English Chronicle. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. And that is a BookBub, which I don't subscribe to anymore because I have no self-control when it comes to books. But my mom subscribes to it, and she sent me one of their deals, which included getting the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle on Kindle for 99 cents. So I was like, okay, I can get the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle for 99 cents. I've been meaning to read that anyway. So that is an eventual read. Might not be this quarter because I still have to finish Bede. And from what I understand, Anglo-Saxon Chronicle is a little bit pieced together, kind of all over the place, just because of all the different versions. But I do look forward to eventually reading that. But yeah, enjoy this. I need to start focusing on this again. The one that, well, I did start reading. I have to bring up my Kindle. I haven't read it in a while because as yet the book hasn't grabbed me very well. This is Athelflaed, Lady of the Mercians. And there's some interesting stuff in there, but as yet barely anything about her. And I'm 21% in, and I'm having trouble focusing on it just because I don't feel like I'm getting a lot about her. It might be because there's not a whole lot of documentation, but I was under the impression that she was one of the ones who had a fair amount of documentation on her. So I just keep waiting for it to heat up a little bit. But I will have to dig back into this because it's been a little while. The one that I've been focusing on more recently is Queen Emma and the Vikings. And I mentioned, I think last time that I talked about this, that one of my, not really it's a nitpick. It's not like a huge issue, but it's a little bit of a nitpick that I have with this book, is that it makes use of the same device that was used by the authors of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, God's on Earth, I think is the name of the title. And I really did not like that book when I read it last quarter. And they made use of a device where they would start each chapter with like this little fictional set piece where they like sort of let it play out, and then they would go into the actual meat of things. And I don't know what the point of that is. I mean, I guess they're trying to draw people in. I just find it annoying and a waste of space. But this book does make use of a similar device. For whatever reason, it's slightly less annoying in this one. Maybe there's not as many chapters. But, you know, I don't read history books to have them tell me, even if I know ahead of time this is a section that is fictional. I don't really read history to read fiction that's telling me this character thought that, this character thought this. I'm reading this for a history book, so it's not my favorite device. It's not as annoying here, but all these are just my markers so I can find the family tree, the list of, well, characters for lack of a better term, and the chronology. I really want to look at the chronology more because this is cool. So they'll show, okay, Emma's life, and they'll say 880s, 978, 980s, 1002, and they'll go through that on one side, and then they'll have, okay, well, this is what's going on in England during this time, and then another part of this diagram says, okay, well, this is what's going on in Western Europe at this time. And then the next column is what's going on in the rest of the world at this time. And I think that is super cool. And I'm looking forward to looking at that more because I actually kind of wish more books would do that, because it's easy to kind of forget what's going on in the rest of the world at that time. And it can very much affect what is happening in England and, you know, Europe and whatever area you're at, because they're just reverberations across the Christian world. They all sort of tied into each other in some way or another, either by marriage or due to other political reasons. But yeah, so I did like this. It's nice to get a snapshot of the medieval world, early medieval world at that time. I did, you know, put a little note, sticky notes to show a part that I did enjoy, where it talked a little bit at the very beginning about some of the Old English, which really has made me want to pick up my book on Old English. And I do very much appreciate that this book does make a point of, you know, taking a little side of being, well, this is what it was in the language, this is what it meant, So I do appreciate that. I have a love of languages, even though I can't speak any languages but English, but I do have a love of the history of language. So that is something that I have really enjoyed in this book. By the way, there is a good course on not Goodreads. Wow, on great courses. I believe it's called The Secret Life of Words. I can't remember who the teacher is. I don't think it's Dorsey Armstrong. I think it's somebody else. Really good set of lectures. Thoroughly enjoyed that. They talk about things like the Great Vowel Shift, a whole bunch of other things. Highly recommend. Anyway, don't know whether or not, I can't remember if it goes into Old English or not. Anyway, I might have to stop, take a little break pretty soon because it sounds like my tea time is about to start. Anyway. But some of the things that are interesting here is they explain where some of these common names come from, why you keep seeing some of these elements in the names. So we see a lot of Athel used. We see a lot of names like Athelstan or Godgafu. So they explain, okay, this is why you see this. That Athel beginning means noble, and that God beginning is good. Well, Godgafu is good gift. So I guess God is good, and then Gafu is gift, which is like, oh, that makes sense. I can see the progression there. And even though I can't see where Athel becomes noble, although I can see where Stan becomes stone, but with Athel, at least knowing that becomes noble, every time I see someone with a name Athel something, I try to look at the second part and see if I can figure out, well, what are they noble of? And that's kind of cool. I think they mentioned in the other book that I'm reading, why her name is Athel something as well. It was Athel as well. Yeah, hers was Athelflaed, and if I remember correctly, it was like noble beauty or something like that. So knowing that was cool, and they did go into that in the Athelflaed book. But they also go into some things in this book, some of those kind of fun names that you sometimes see, like with you saw this in ancient Rome, where was it the name where there was like that was like their nickname that they would go by, and it would eventually become a family name, and sometimes it was quite insulting. But they have some of those kind of fun, descriptive, insulting names here as well. It seems like there was a certain era where that was just kind of like the thing, because I want to say you saw a fair amount of that in the Carolingian. Yeah, I can't word. Anyway, you saw a fair amount of that through medieval time. But they're talking about how, okay, well, Harold's son is obviously son of Harold, but then you have other ones like Edith the Fair Hair, and I feel like you see Fair Hair, decently enough, fairly often. The other one, even though they don't have it here, is you'll see it's for guys like, I don't know, Francis the Fair, and usually that doesn't mean he's blonde, it means he's, really handsome or something. But Edgar the Bold, and then I like the sardonic ones, Yadrick the Inquisitor, and he came up actually a fair amount in the book on Anglo-Saxons that Mark Morris wrote. And then Godwin the Slaverer, and I can't figure out, okay, so the God part is good, so the win part is Godwin. I haven't yet put that one together yet. I'm hoping that the book on medieval Old English will help me with that a little bit. They also had some things about the riddles, which made me grin because I was like, oh, okay, yeah, here's some of the precedent that said that kind of, I can see some of the influence for this for Tolkien, because you think of the Riddles in the Dark, the chapter with Gollum and Bilbo in The Hobbit, where they do all the riddles And it just kind of has some of the same feel, the riddles for that. One example they have here, the one that doesn't have an innuendo to it, is the wave over wave, a weird thing I saw, thorough wrought and wonderfully ornate, a wonder on the wave, water became bone. And I think that could have fit very well into the Riddles in the Dark. And I'm going to read that one more time, maybe go off into a little other topic, and then come back and say what the answer is and see if anyone got it. I didn't because I'm not good at riddles, but. So it says, the wave over wave, a weird thing I saw, thorough wrought and wonderfully ornate, a wonder on the wave, water became bone. Now, other things that I found that were kind of interesting. By the way, footnotes are good for this as well. They're not as funny necessarily as Guy de Beauvoir's in Pharaohs of the Sun, but I do enjoy the footnotes to this. Where's the footnote I had? Oh, there it is. So, footnote 9 of Peace Weaver. Okay. So footnote 9. Is that the second chapter? Let's see. I had to find which chapter that would be. Oh. That was what it cracked me up. It wasn't the footnote itself. It was just a silly little thing where it's like they had a little footnote marker, and that number was 9, and the footnote marker was right over the year 999, and that for some reason cracked me up that you had 999 with the footnote 9. I thought it was an actual note about something the footnote said, so I'll get rid of that note. But something I did find interesting before I go back to the answer about the riddle is they were talking about in one of the notes how in England originally there were only hares, and it wasn't until the Norman Conquest that rabbits came over to England, which kind of cracked me up because the English kind of became semi-notorious for bringing rabbits to other countries they were colonizing and affecting the ecosystem when suddenly these rabbits who had no natural predators there initially just sort of multiplied and kind of took things over. And you saw this particularly in Australia. There was another country as well, I think it was an island. I can't remember which one it was. And I've heard before people kind of mocking the British for bringing their bunnies with them wherever just because they couldn't be without their rabbit to eat, I guess. And I thought it was I thought it was amusing that this wasn't even a thing that they had in England until 1066 because they wanted a source of protein. But that was funny. So, yeah, those are all my particular notes about this book. So I'll go back to the answer to the riddle. So, the final time repeating the riddle itself, the wave over wave, a weird thing I saw, thorough wrought and wonderfully ornate, a wonder on the wave, water became bone. And the answer to that is ice. So that's cool. Not going to read you the one with innuendo to it. You'll have to read the book itself for that. And I also, started rereading a book at this time just because I've had enough times where I can't focus that I was like, okay, I just need a read where I can just turn off my brain and read. So I picked up again Timothy Zahn's Thrawn trilogy, Heir to the Empire. Yes, it says Legends on it. Am I happy about that? No, but I don't have anymore my original copy that was pre-Disney messing with the extended universe canon. So, unfortunately, unless I buy a used one, which I really didn't think about at the time, they're all going to say Legends on it because Disney messed with years of canon. But anyhow, other than being salty about that, I always enjoy this series of books. Timothy Zahn has a particular gift for writing interesting characters. His characters that came out of this book ended up creating reverberations throughout the extended universe, characters that eventually became very important characters, some of the best characters in the Star Wars extended universe came from this trilogy. In some ways, I like some of these characters better than the original characters that Lucas created. But yeah, really enjoyable trilogy. I last read one of the Timothy Zahn books when I read the 2 prequels that he wrote to this. Reread those a little while ago, so I figured, well, I'm trying to make my way through the ones that I know Timothy Zahn wrote in the Legendarium. Well, that makes it sound like Tolkien. In the extended universe for Star Wars. And I think there's only one that I haven't read that doesn't go much later than I prefer to read. But I want to make my way to that particular book. I don't want to say too much about particular character arcs because I don't want to ruin people's enjoyment of this book, because some of these arcs are quite fun, particularly with some of the original characters that Zahn created. And when you read this book and other books in the extended universe, it really hits home what a character assassination all of the original characters, but particularly Luke, was subject to in the most recent Star Wars movies. His character was completely assassinated, really. He wasn't given his due. Is completely out of character for him to behave the way that he did. And falling in love with this character, seeing all the trials and tribulations that he goes throughout this extended universe, these are years worth of books, Lucas approved books. They're in the back of every book. They have a novel timeline where they show, okay, well, this is what happened here and this is what happened there. So the authors are Lucas's I don't know who was in charge of the Lucas books, but they were keeping track of what was going on. And there is a special edition, I have it on Kindle, to Heir of the Empire, where throughout Timothy Zahn does commentary of what was going through his head when he was writing it, of what things like that, just what was going through his head when he was writing it, things that sort of came out while he was writing it, maybe some of his favoritism towards certain characters over others. But it was, one of the things he mentioned was how much research he did into the world to make sure that his book fit in seamlessly with what already existed in the extended universe. And this is how you do you do building off of beloved um, beloved franchises, I guess. That's not the word I wanted, but that have been around for many years. That is how you handle it well. You look at what comes before, you show respect for it, and you make sure what you write fits within that. And Disney completely, didn't show no respect for what had come before. These books have been written almost since the movies came out. I think the first one written, even though they say that, I forget where they put it in here, they tried to claim that this is the first, in this essential Star Wars Legends novel, the first ever to take place after the events of the original trilogy. False. I believe that, I think it was called Splinter in the Mind's Eye. You can tell it's an early one because the characterization isn't quite on yet, but there are plenty of books that precede this. Truce of Bakura, quite a few I can think of. The one with Dash Render, that was good. What's that one called? Oops. That's pre. Is that Shadows in the Empire? That might have been Shadows in the Empire. So there are plenty of books in the Legends that take place before this. So, Disney can't even be bothered to take a look at their own chronology that they have in the back of the book. Anyway, I said I was done being salty. I'm done being salty. Really now. No, I'm not. Put that away. Let's go into the books that I have acquired during this period of time. And like I said, this should be last for a while. I have a couple of pre-orders that I put in a while back. A couple in and I'm looking at books at my shelf behind you, which is why I'm looking up. A couple in the Countess of Harley series. She has two pre-orders coming through that, and Timothy Zahn has one coming through. I usually pick up his books when they show up. Okay, so the first one I'm going to show is one that I've been meaning to read for a while. This is called The Butchering Art, Joseph Leicester's quest to transform the grisly world of Victorian medicine. And I find his story and his contribution to be very interesting, of course, very impactful. Listerine is named after this man, and he had a lot to do with promoting an antiseptic, just a cleaner environment when doing surgeries, and his influence saved many lives. So I'm really looking forward to reading more about his story. This is going to be good. And this is by Lindsay Fitzharris. The next one, this one's actually quite used. I think someone might have used this in school. When I picked it up, usually I pick up books, I make sure that it says no writing inside. Well, this one definitely has underlining inside, but I'm kind of okay with that. I have to be okay with it because that's what it is. But this will be an interesting book regardless. Like I said, I do think they read this for a college course just because of the kind of things they underlined. Now, I wonder if this is for a medical course because they have orthopedic written here. Now, I am that person who, if I am reading a book, even if it's not for like a course or something, if I have something interesting in a non-fictional book, I will highlight, I will even write in the margins, but I have this feeling this might have been for a course. So it's called Civil War Medicine, Challenges and Triumphs. I almost have picked up a different book that was talking about a doctor who was very influential from this period, but the comments said at least one comment, if not more, said, this book is only okay. I recommend this book instead. So I was like, well, I'm going to go for the more comprehensive book that seems to be more recommended and better rated. This is by Alfred J. Bolle. I'm going to pronounce it Bolle. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. I guess it could be Bollett as well. And he's an MD. So it should be, I anticipate medicalese, because in my personal experience working with doctors, sometimes they have trouble bringing language down to a layperson's understanding, because they can easily forget, and this happens, I think, in most specialized fields. It's easy for them to forget that just because they think they're being clear doesn't mean that it's clear to the patient, because they don't share the same reference point of the education the doctor has. I can't tell you how many times I would be looking, just waiting outside the room, looking at from the nurse's station. One of my doctors just sort of like spitfire going through instructions and just leave afterwards thinking he, did a pretty good job. And I could tell the patient and the family member were so confused. And then I'd follow right behind and be like, so this is what he was actually trying to communicate to you. So I fully anticipate that there could be some of, why are you turning the pages down? Don't do that to a book. Stop doing that to books. Anyway. So I anticipate potentially that kind of language where the author could well forget that there might be a different audience reading it. Maybe that's not the audience he intended it for. Maybe he is intending this for medical students. I have not yet read the preface or anything. Now, he could have also had an editor to kind of tweak things, be like, hey, you need to reword this here. You need to make this more understandable. We'll have to see. I need to drink. My mouth is incredibly dry. Okay. The next one. This was actually, this was something that was recommended to me by someone in the Discord for the Historathon. I don't want to name them because I'm not sure if they want to be named, but I really am grateful for the recommendation. I do have the digital form courtesy of this person, but I also could not resist, and also this is before I got the digital form from them, I could not resist the physical one because they had a steep sale on it. And it's called Cambridge Illustrated History of Medicine. It's edited by Roy Porter, and I don't know why I didn't register that illustrated meant illustrated, like not just pictures. I mean like photographs, but this has works of art, which is amazing. My dad is a self-taught artist, self-taught painter. I have one of his paintings up there. I showed it one episode. I don't want to move the camera and make you all dizzy. I might place a picture again of that, or of some of his other paintings that we have scattered around the house. We basically have an art gallery because he is constantly painting. I have there are way more paintings of me and my mom and sister than the average person probably has, because we are the most readily available subjects for him to paint. But regardless, my point was that I looked at the painting and I recognized it. I knew I recognized it, but I didn't immediately recognize the artist. And I knew my dad would. And I don't know why I didn't recognize the artist right away. This is one of my favorite artists. I went to an exhibit of him and the other Dutch masters when I was in a conference in Boston. They had a particular showing it. It was a special thing where all these Dutch masters were going to be there, and we just happened to hit the time period where they were there. And Dad's a huge fan of the Dutch masters. I am as well. Great Courses has an amazing course on the Dutch masters, by the way, if that is something that you are interested in. But yeah, this is a Rembrandt, which is really cool. It looks like it might be a guild for surgeons. They usually, I think it might have been surgeons and barbers. I think barbers were in the same one with surgeons. But while there are pictures in here, like actual photographs, when you... Oh, that looks like... Yeah, I thought that was part of the skeleton. Okay. While there are, like I said, a lot of photographs in here, there's also a lot of period art. And I'm trying to find... Well, here's one for Black Death. This was published in the Great Plague of London since 1665. So, not sure how well you can see that. So I'm also very grateful that I do get to have both forms, you know, the digital for going around, but I also really like being able to see the pictures in full size in person. This is an 1807 to 1879 piece of art. This is of a guy who was a Quaker fanatic who ran naked through the streets of London during the Great Plague with a dish of burning sulfur on his head, preaching repentance and prophesying catastrophes. So that kind of ties into our side quest of watching the course on the Great Death by Dorsey Armstrong on the Great Courses. Oh, here we go. This is a physician who... I had to look at the thing later because it looks like it's talking about love sickness or something like that. So I have to look into that more. But that is a piece of artwork from 1802. I love this, maybe one of the last ones I show. This is a doctor and his assistant running a visiting vaccination clinic in Germany. And this painting by Reinhard Zimmermann in 1857. And I just love the composition of this. I mean, yes, there's a lot going on. There we go. There's a lot going on. But there's, I don't know, I just really enjoy all the small details, the composition. I do recommend being able to look at this up close and just looking at all the different details that are going on here. If I didn't know better, I would have thought this was a Dutch master because it has that kind of feel. But this is... Reinhard Zimmermann does sound like an actual German artist. But darn if it doesn't give a feel of a Dutch master. But anyway, I'm really excited about this book. Like I said, when I quickly looked through the digital form, I had only noticed the photographs. It wasn't until this came in and I saw the cover and I started flipping through that I saw the actual paintings and other period artwork in here. And that makes me super excited. It ties in some art history with some medical history, which is just really awesome. Oh, that's where I'm putting books. I will be really glad to put some of these books away because they've been kind of just stacked until I had a chance to show them. Okay, the next I'm going to show, and this has been over somewhat of a period of time. I've heard a lot about this, Morgoth's Ring. It keeps getting quoted in TolkienTube, and I gave in, I picked it up. I will eventually read this. This is more of Tolkien's notes that he had scattered everywhere that Christopher Tolkien put together into a volume. This will go in my Tolkien section. I have a Tolkien section by my bed. This one is an accidental find. Oliver Wendell Holmes in Paris, Medicine, Theology, and the Autocrat of the Breakfast Table. And I don't even know why I found this. But one of the descriptors talked about how during a time period where there was really almost a coldness in the medical practice with his theology, with his appreciation of theology, he put some of that warmth back into it. And that's what I remember from the description on the Amazon page. And that intrigued me. And this is the only book I could find specifically about this era and that topic. Most of the other books discuss his son, Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., who was an American politician, who I really don't have much interest in reading about currently, even though I think he was particularly influential in free speech, if I remember correctly. I only remember from glancing through a book about him quickly on Amazon to see if this was also someone I'd want to read about. It's not currently. But yeah, it's something I look forward to reading. I was trying to see if it has the thing that was mentioned on the Amazon page, but it does not, unfortunately. But yeah, I look forward to reading this. Medicine Theology and the Autocrat of the Breakfast Table. So he was also a writer, from what I understand. Yeah, that's this book. The last part of my P.F. Chisholm series about, I always forget the name of the main character, Sir Robert Carey. This finally came in because you can only get this physical form. It is not currently available on Kindle. This contains the last 3 books, I believe it is. This is an omnibus, obviously, because I said it contains the last 3 books. And what I actually really like about it, besides, of course, it's finished in series, this has library markings on it. And not only library markings, it's Dublin City library markings. So it actually has a library card, nothing on it, so this library card did not appear like it was used. I don't know if it was attached to this book and then they got a digital library system. I don't know. I kind of somewhat miss the days of the card system and of the library cards being used, but that wasn't, I don't think it was very long that I got to have that experience. Military bases might have caught up a little more slowly onto having everything being digital, but I do remember using the card system and learning how to put together, like how to write up a library card when I was in school. I'm not sure if every kid learned to do that, but I was homeschooled and I did learn to put together like what the library card should have on it and all that other kind of stuff. But that's neither here nor there. This has a library card on it. This has the Dublin City Public Library's website. And then it has things in, I guess this is Celtic, which is super duper cool. So it has the English and the Celtic. And it has the same thing, I think it was in the back. Oh, it's underneath of the dust jacket, where it looks like it's saying the public library, but in Celtic as well as English, which made me happy. Actually, let's see, I think, yeah, this says Celtic on this as well, because it says Celtic and English as well, if you look really closely at the library stamp. I don't mind having library markings. I only mind when there's some writing in the book, but some library markings? No, give me library markings. And if there are names on the library card, I'm even happier. This comes with a ribbon. Did not know that when I picked it up. I've been getting more books with ribbons in it than I've ever had, which is kind of happy. This was another book recommended by the person who recommended the Cambridge Illustrated History of Medicine. He recommended, he had just finished reading Richard I by John Gillingham, Yale English Monarchs. I think I got this one on sale too. I usually hunt down sales. And he said this was really good. And I do look forward to reading that. Whether or not I'll get to read that this quarter is another thing altogether. But anytime I have a chance of reading something that is going to be objective, I jump at it simply because it is all too easy to find a biased book. Now, every author is going to have somewhat of a bias. It is impossible to have no bias whatsoever. But or pretty much impossible to have no bias whatsoever. But the lower amount, the less of a bias there is, the happier I am. And you can there are authors who do even mention they are truly attempting to be unbiased. And I had this recommended to me as a book that is unbiased. Stay. This was one, I definitely picked this one up free. Not free, wow. Very much on sale. And that's why I picked it up, because it was usually like double the price. These medical, especially the Cambridge University ones, they are really expensive if you get them full price. And if you catch one that is used for a really good price, you really have to jump at it on it because it's hard to get. And this is Drugs and Narcotics in History, which should be interesting. You're going to see things like the opium poppy, and there's more about opium, alcohol. This is multiple different papers set aside as chapters, so they're different authors that are putting this together. It's all put together, though. It's edited and made one cohesive thing by the same person who did the Cambridge Illustrated History, Roy Porter. So that's cool. I have another book that is similar to this in style that I started reading last quarter, but I didn't get to finish. It was about caregiving in the ancient world. And it's a similar style of having a bunch of papers that different scholars put together, different historians. This is shorter than that other book, and for some reason sometimes I just feel like you need a physical book just so that way you get an idea of where you are in it, particularly if it's something that might be a bit dry. And sometimes some of these scholarly ones can be a bit dry. Okay, so when I went down a Tolkien rabbit hole, I also found, this is one of the ones that I got for free when I returned, well, free. I am using logic from Life with Father that his wife used after she returned the pug dog statue, because she had already spent the money, so getting her son a fresh pair of pants was free, even though, technically it kind of wasn't, but it feels like free money, just like anytime you get a tax return, it feels like free money, even though it was money that had been spent that is being given back to you. Anyway, similar logic. I returned a couple knee braces. It was credited to my Amazon account. Felt like free money, just like when she returned the pug dog, it felt like free money. But I need to hurry up because it's almost tea time. This is Tolkien's The Legend of Sigurd and Gudrun, and this is, from what I understand, an original one of his. I don't know a whole lot about it. It talks about the lays of the Volsungs. That might not be original. That probably, I don't know. I don't know a whole lot about this, but I do know it's, let's see. He composed his own version, now published for the first time, of the great legend of northern antiquity in two closely related poems, to which he gave the titles The New Lay of the Volsungs and The New Lay of Gudrun. So it's a reimagining of something older. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, the other one from the series, uh, by P.F. Chisholm. This one is A Season of Knives, and it goes with that other, um, the omnibus of Robert about Sir Robert Carey. That's a historical fiction. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. This is another one of the books I picked up. It's from Christopher Tolkien put together a series of books, a collection called The History of Middle Earth. And I didn't pick up all the volumes. I wasn't necessarily interested in all the volumes, but this one is about the shaping of Middle Earth. And these are notes that Tolkien put together that he didn't necessarily intend to be published at the time. I'm looking forward to this one. Again, Tolkien, but not in his created world of Middle Earth. This is The Fall of Arthur. It will go nicely with my Gawain and the Green Knight that he translated. Um, so I look forward to The Fall of Arthur. And it'll be fun to compare it to my translation by Dorsey Armstrong, which I own. I have the full Arthurian legend, everything in a huge book that was put together by Dorsey Armstrong that I dug into it a little bit, but I haven't gotten terribly far because it's huge. And you don't realize how incredibly violent some of these stories are. You're like, wow, these are the good guys. But I mean, it's time period. That was what they did, and that was their world. This is another one of Frances and Joseph Jai's. I mentioned theirs before. Why do they have a sticker on her face? This, oh, I don't want to tear the sticker. This is a medieval family. There, I think it's getting off. There we go. A medieval family, the pastons of 15th century England. And what's interesting is there was a lot of documentation about this particular family. From what I gather, they weren't necessarily anyone of particularly high status. Maybe like from the developing middle class, but they had a lot of documentation to show what they were doing, and I think it was a lot of letters that they had, and they were able to find these letters and create a picture of what a normal family life might look like in the medieval world using this family as an example. So I thought that was kind of cool. I don't know anything about this family, but just that particular idea of getting a picture of some of the ordinary people in medieval times from their own mouths is going to be fun. Or at least using words from their own mouths to tell the story about them. This book is a little bit beaten up because this was definitely a used book. Both of these were, but this one is showing it a little bit more. The cover's bent. Women in the Middle Ages. I basically, when I picked up these, I picked up the whole set because I already had some of them, but like 3 or 4 of them already. But this is another Frances and Joseph Jai's book, The Lives of Real Women in a Vibrant Age of Transition. So this would be set a little bit earlier than, a bit earlier, I guess over 100 years earlier than the one I read, Maids, Wives, and Widows. So I am interested in seeing where this will compare with Maids, Wives, and Widows, how much the roles and freedoms women experience change from the Middle Ages to Elizabethan England, what they were calling the early modern age. Another drink. And this is one my mom thought she had, and she didn't, and she really wanted this one, and apparently my entire collections of Frances and Joseph Jai's is also her collection, Frances and Joseph Jai's, because we have a long-going shared story that we were writing that's semi-fantasy. Oh, it is fantasy, but semi-medieval time, as a lot of fantasies seem to be, because they're influenced by Tolkien. But yeah, she picked up the original set that she had because of her writing, and she thought she had this one. She didn't, and she has laid claim to be able to use this as a writing resource anytime she wants to. So, like I said, my medieval book collection of Francis and Joseph Gies is her medieval book collection of Francis and Joseph Gies. So, that's that one. I have two more to show, then we're done. Which is great because at that point my mom should be ready for our tea time because I can hear her on the phone. This is the last one in the collection, although this one's only Francis Gies. Now, her husband does have one or two books by himself. I just wasn't interested in them. They weren't set in the same time period. I think that they were more, World War II, I think. I can't remember. I wasn't interested enough to look into them. But this one is The Night in History. So I do anticipate this being interesting as well, particularly since some of the things that we are writing are particularly court focused. This will also be very good for context for some of the other books that I read in this era. And then finally, the one I've been so looking forward to reading. I already read one other book by this author. It was, I can't remember, the White King. I can't remember what they call it. It was the one that was about Henry VII. It was very interesting, and it was by Thomas Penn. And I have been wanting to read The Brothers York by him. Brothers York, A Royal Tragedy. Look how thick that book is. This may or may not be read this quarter. Probably not, but I look forward to eventually reading this. It is a thick old book, but I do remember enjoying this author. I love the uneven pages here. But I remember him being someone. Now, I listened to the first book, but I remember him being someone who was easy to listen to. But yeah, that is all that I'm reading, all that I picked up. I do need to flee because I am very certain that the phone call is going to end pretty soon over there, and we usually have tea once a day, and it is about that time. Okay, thank you very much for joining me today. I hope to see you next time. Hope that you found something that you enjoy. I always forget to say this, but I do have links below regarding the Historathon. The people who are hosting the Historathon, there are plenty of other people who are taking part who are not hosts. I do recommend looking for the Historathon thread. You can you can hit the tag, or just look for Historathon on YouTube, and you can find other booktubers who are partaking in this Historathon who are not necessarily leaders, because I know I'm not. I'm just taking part. So I do recommend that. I also have a different channel that is my knitting and crocheting podcast YouTube channel with my mom. We've been doing it for 11 years now, 12 years, something like that. We hit our 10-year anniversary. Wait, last year? I think we're at 11 years now. So, yeah, we've been doing that for quite a while. And then, let's see, what else do I have down there? My Goodreads link, my link for my, Storygraph. I also have added my Instagram link for the booktube. And finally, if you want to read inconsistently posted ranty writings, I do have my blog down there as well, where I will just go off on random rants just because I feel like it. And sometimes have other writing in there too, but nothing that's super duper, It's not like I'm putting serious novels or anything up there. It's mostly opinion things. But that being said, those are all the links below. Thank you very much for listening to me ramble and looking at a bunch of covers of books that I have not read yet. But thank you very much. Hopefully see you next time. Hopefully you found something that you could enjoy here. God bless.